Hi, everyone. Welcome to Automating DNS, DHCP, and IPAM with Micetro. I'm Lauren Malhoy. I am the Director of Technical Content here at Men&Mice, and I'll be running this very quick 10-minute demo today. Just want to let you all know this is very informal, so please feel free to write in the comments of whatever platform you're using, and I'll try to answer any questions real time. But we'd love to make this interactive, so yeah, just go ahead and write in some comments as you like. Today, we are going to get into the Micetro web UI, as you can see here up on my screen. And then, of course, we'll be spending most of our time in the REST API to show actually how you can create a DHCP scope. That's going to be the object that we're concentrating on today. Before we do get into that, I do just want to very quickly kind of level set on what Micetro is, what it can do for you, so that we can kind of all know what we're looking at here. So Micetro is a DNS, DHCP, and IPAM solution, what we often lovingly refer to as DDI. We are an overlay and orchestration solution. So what you get out of that is just a really easy way to manage and view your entire DNS, DHCP, and IPAM environments, both in the cloud or on premises, from just one GUI or from one API, depending on what you prefer or what you're trying to do. So for example, if you want to create a workflow involving DNS record creation, just picking that out of the blue, you don't have to create, let's say, a different workflow over here in AWS Route 53 and then create a whole other workflow for Azure DNS and then yet another workflow for your on-premises DNS like Microsoft or Bind. You can just create the one workflow going through the Maestro APIs. And then if you choose to change some of those underlying services later, you can continue to use that one workflow. So that's just one way where using an overlay solution is makes it really easier for you to use. Like I said, we're going to be jumping into DHCP scopes today. If you're not familiar with DHCP, it stands for Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol. And what it really does is just allows IT admins to deal out IP addresses to things like laptops or tablets or phones, things that don't require a static or permanent IP address. It's what allows you to basically get on the network when you go to work or even at home, right? If you're using an ISP, a router from your ISP, or maybe a wireless access point that's dealing out IPs to you so that you can communicate then with other devices over the internet or over your home network or business network. Um, Obviously you can see even at home, if you have two different devices that could be dealing out IP addresses, you could imagine in a larger enterprise, there are just multiple devices that might be dealing out DHCP, especially when we get into campus and branch and all of that. So again, that overlay solution of being able to manage your DHCP from one place really comes in handy. So let's go ahead and take a look at what this looks like in Maestro. I am in the Maestro web UI right now, so I clicked on IPAM. IPAM is where we manage everything IP, everything DHCP related. So I can go ahead and I can see all my networks here. And then when I click on DHCP scopes, then I can very easily see what's in my DHCP scopes. I can dive into these and see the different IP addresses in there. I can do things like manage DHCP exclusions. So for example, if I only want maybe 50 of these IP addresses to be dealt out to laptops and the like, and then maybe I want to save the other 200 or whatever it is for static IP addressing, maybe for a server or router, things like that. But all sorts of things that we can do right here in the web UI. But of course, you are here to learn more about our REST API. So let me just scroll up here. As you can see, I got to my REST API simply by appending the web server address with /mmws/API/doc. And this is what will take you to your API documentation if you have Maestro Web Services installed. Anything you can do in the management console in our web UI, you can do via the APIs. As you can see, we have a ton of objects out here, a ton of categories. And right now, I actually have DHCP scopes open. Let me just show you how I can toggle that on and off. So simply by toggling, I can get into what I want to do, these different actions that are possible via the API. So these get, post, put, and delete actions that you can see they're kind of color coded here. These relate to the CRUD actions that we talked about last week. In case you missed it, you can go ahead and check out our YouTube with all of the automation series. Feel free to check that out in case you want to see what else we're doing. But essentially, if I use the get action, that's read. If I use post, that's create. Put would be update, and delete, of course, is delete. Today, we're going to be concentrating on posting or creating an object via the APIs. So you can see there, this is very descriptive. I'm going to post DHCP scopes, which adds a new DHCP scope. Um, and now we can click down into this. And what's really cool is that in the Micetro APIs, we've built a backend of an open source software solution called Swagger. So basically, Swagger allows you to just try things out right here in the API documentation. If you've ever heard of Postman or played with Postman, um, it's very similar to doing that. So if we jump into post here, I can see at the very top that I have a response class status 201. What this means is that once I click try it out and I create something, if I've created this DHCP scope properly, I should get a response code of 201, which means successful. 200 would be the status code that we get back if we were just trying to read something. So anything in that 200 range is going to be good. It's going to be successful. Anything, let's say in the 400s, is generally an error. You can easily Google it and understand, get a deeper definition of what these response codes mean. I can see under here, my response class, this is what I'm going to get back is a reference object, essentially, that'll give me a string type. It's going to be a number, basically, that references the DHCP scope that I've created. And of course, I'm going to be returning in JSON. I could choose XML as well. JSON is a little easier to read, a little more human readable, hierarchical. But again, feel free to Google JSON and XML. There's plenty of information about those formats out there. So let's jump into the meat of it, the more important stuff, the parameters. Now, again, we've made this just really easy for you. I have some information in there already that we'll just get rid of. But over here under data type, if I just click in this model schema window, it will automatically copy and paste this information into the value of the body. So this is what we need to fill out in order to create this DHCP scope in this situation. Now, of course, these are basically variables, the value key pairs here. You can see it's of type string, but I'm going to need to fill that out in order to give it some useful information. Now, if you're just getting started, there are a lot of ways to find this information. So if I click on model here, this actually defines all of those different values for me. And it tells me if things are optional, if they're required. So that's a really good way to start learning what we need to put into this value here. Another way, easy way to learn what we need to do is just use get and try to read the information, see what you can find out there, what you already have. For this particular parameter, I don't actually have to fill anything out. I could filter it down. But if I just click on try it out, it actually returns a lot of my DHCP scope information. So now I can see, the reference for this particular DHCP scope is 1008. This just gives me a little bit more familiarity with what I need to fill in, what I'm actually looking for, and the types of things that I can specify as well. Now, what's also cool about this is, it's all well and good to come in and create one DHCP scope, but, as we think about automating workflows, it's not really about necessarily making things happen more quickly. It's about creating templatized things, creating consistent networks, consistent configurations. And what this does is really make troubleshooting much easier. Troubleshooting and less human error, all of those things become much more consistent so that then uptime and performance, those are really what are at stake when we start talking about automating workflows. So luckily, what I've done here already in my notes is created some parameters that we can put in here so that you don't have to watch me fumble around with that. I'm just going to copy and paste this. I'll go through it real quick though so you understand what I put in. So I followed this model schema. I basically copied and pasted, and then I input some information for all of these string values or Boolean values. So for the name, you can specify whatever you want the name of that DHCP scope to be. Maybe it's just the DHCP scope itself. You could put 192.168.100.0 in. That's certainly okay. I called mine branch one closet because maybe this is a DHCP scope that's being dealt out by my closet over in branch one. The range ref. So I've put in 192.168.100.0. This is actually referring to which IP range I want to use. So if I jump back in my web UI, I just want to show you real quick, and then I just do a quick filter on that information, I can see that I have this range already in Maestro. Again, this is a range, not a DHCP scope yet. I can see that I have 0% utilization, which means that I'm not using this scope. I can go ahead and with confidence go ahead and deal out these IP addresses and know that they're not already assigned to a server or something somewhere, causing some conflicts later. I see that they're all free, which is great. And then eventually I can actually see all this information once this starts getting populated. So let's jump back into the API then. Um, I also have the DHCP server information here. There are a lot of ways you can get this. You could ping the server to get the name. You could actually go into the server itself and find the name. Of course, you can go into Maestro, find the DHCP server pretty easily. Look at all your platforms. Could be anything, right? If you want to choose a Microsoft DHCP server, you can just go in and copy that name information. Okay. I have enabled set to true. That just basically kind of turns it on. It makes it possible for me to use this DHCP scope. Um, and then Maestro gives you the ability to add a comment if you like. So, why am I creating this? What is it for? We can do this when we create objects, when we edit objects, all sorts of things. And it just gives us more information than when we go to look at the history of an object within our DDI environment. Okay, so let's go ahead and try it out and cross our fingers that it works. And it did. So essentially, this is the location that we've gone to. We have our our URL that we can actually even go to. This is literally where that information lives. I can go to a web browser and put that in. And because this is kind of a get action, I'm not putting anything necessarily. I can see all of the different DHCP scopes that are available. This is the same information that came up when I went to get DHCP scopes. Um, you can see this is what was returned. We knew that that's what it would look like because up here it told us we would get the reference value and the string type. So it's string type DHCP scope 211160. And then of course I did get a response code 201, which means I successfully created this DHCP scope. And if you don't believe me, we can go back in and we can see this information once I get rid of my filter here. And of course, yes, now we have this scope created. And now we can do all sorts of things like view the history. Of course, you can view history via the APIs as well. And we'll get into some of that later. That's it for right now. Again, feel free to ask questions anytime. This will be posted on demand in our YouTube playlist, as I mentioned before. And please let us know if you're looking for any other information. Thanks, everyone, for watching. We'll see you next week.